A theme that is becoming very apparent in today's world is how can common folk empower themselves and also how can they begin to appreciate to what extent who they are, their very being in the world, has been radically influenced by things that, processes that are a myriad and all crossed over to produce people of a particular kind, where, to use an expression out of sociology, we've been socially constructed to be people of a particular kind. And it's a bit of a wake-up call to begin to realise to what extent who I am, my basic assumptions, my ideas, my beliefs, my preferences, because it was V.F. Skinner back in the 1930s who said, give me a chance to influence people at the level of inclination, and I can get them to have a tremendous sense of freedom, because I'm literally teeing up processes that control them at the level of inclination. They're doing what they're inclined to do, but that's all been structured. So given the perniciousness, the saturation, how can the common folk possibly do anything? Now, one of the things that I've been influenced about is the notion that some people are naturally good at nurturing themselves and nurturing others. And these are a potential extraordinary resource that is available to the common folk, the natural nurturer. I ended up receiving a lot of money over 3 years to visit 7 countries up in Southeast Asia. I had to go right out into the remote countryside and look for natural nurturers. Now, I could go into a little village right out in the middle of nowhere, say in East Timor, Cambodia or Vietnam, Thai-Burma border regions, and look at 300 people in a marketplace. You know, say, oh, there's a natural nurturer. There's another one. And, oh, this one over here is waving to that one. I'm not surprised they know each other. Oh, and there's one over there. You know, the two of them have got together, and they're waving at this third one. Ah, so they all know one another. So I'm not quite sure how I know, but the phrase that I use, there's something in the way they move, the way they are in the world, that I can just like, I look for the cherries in the fruitcake, I can find the natural nurturers. So I ended up finding about 140 natural nurturers, and I found that because they're naturally interested in people, I found that I could easily talk to them, just say hi, and they would end up wanting to find out who I was and what I was there for and what I was interested in. And I would say, well, I'm travelling here to meet people like you. I would love to hear some of your stories. So I became like a sponge, and I would do all those things that would encourage people to keep talking. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, good. What happened after that? Oh, right. Tell me more. So all of this, and they would talk and talk and talk. Now, what I was doing was finding out what is it that they do. And typically, I was hearing the same things from the same type of people. It was an intercultural phenomenon. It was inter-clan, it was inter-peoples. Some were indigenous, some were small minorities. But the same themes kept on cropping up. That people, when they are down, they literally become down. Like if I'm like this and then I go, oh. Notice the nature of my energy when I do that. When I do that, totally different. Now what they would do is spot the people who were down. I met a guy up in northern Thailand. He could see the escaping child soldiers fleeing out of Myanmar or Burma, and he could see who was an escaping child soldier purely by the way they walked. He could say, oh, there's one. Now what he would do is literally, a fancy term, is to reshape the analogue. So this would be the child soldier would walk like this. Like as if their body, even though they're a 7 or 10 or 11-year-old boy, as if their body weighed a ton. And one of the first things he would do with them, if he met them, was walk and talk. He would get them walking up a slight hill and walking down a slight hill. And there's something about walking up and down a hill that can literally get you breathing differently and starting to feel differently. So one of the first things these natural nurturers did is to get the people breathing again, having awareness of their breathing and how they walk, and having their centre of gravity instead of low, rising the centre of gravity high. So if you're standing up, a lot of people try and stand up like this. Because notice my centre of gravity is behind my feet. It's the same problem that people have up in the snowfields. They'll have their skis out here and they can't stand up. I can't stand up on my skis. So if you do this, if you rock your body forward and you have your centre of gravity over your feet, high folks walking by, if you put your centre of gravity over your feet, you can stand up easy. And you can do that to come down again. Very easy to stand up. So I found that these people, these natural nurturers, were literally working with people how they moved and how they walked. And suddenly you would have, now I can tell you the story I might have mentioned before. Did I mention about the children singing and dancing on their way to school? Yeah. Yeah, that's a classic example. The boy and the girl literally was able to alter the posture and the breathing and the centre of gravity high, and suddenly with her singing and his response, the children just picked up on their enthusiasm. So it is possible. Now what my good friend that I have mentioned from time to time, Neville, what he did, if he found a natural nurturer and he was going into town, he was up in the Atherton Tablelands. What he used to do was say, oh, I'm going into Atherton, do you want to come with me? We'll do some shopping. On the way, he said, oh, if you don't mind, I'll pop in. I've got to tell this woman that lives in here something. Now, that woman that he was visiting was another natural nurturer. He knew that they didn't know each other. So he would, oh, Elsie, this is Louise, and tell them a little about yourself. And what would happen is they would almost invariably like each other and become friends. And so he kept on linking up the natural nurturers. Now, what I'm talking about here, if I can go into Greek philosophy, there's two terms that I would like to that are appropriate here in terms of how can common folk empower themselves. there's two terms, techne, T-E-C-H-N-E, and phronesis. You're familiar with those two? Yeah. So techne is practical knowing, and from that we have technology. So there's practical knowing about how to use chisels and planes and saws and all these tools. Now that's technique, practical knowing. It's a very, very different thing. What I'm talking about, these natural nurturers, the term that could be used is phronesis or practical wisdom. And this stuff is very, very natural. It is emergent, it's spontaneous, it's appropriate unto the moment. It's guided by the passing moment and even the change from moment to moment. And these natural nurturers were just absolutely spontaneously exquisite in their capacity to be able to have spontaneous utterance that was exquisite unto the moment. That's what I was finding. And even if I posed them something, their capacity to express stories and link together things that happened in their past to give examples of how they do things, quite extraordinary. So the use of practical wisdom, now this means that this is very different. And why I was up in Southeast Asia was there was a couple of people up there from a UN agency that were concerned that the big boys in international aid were coming in and imposing their techniques on people. And I know what you're like, but I sense very quickly when a person is using a technique on me. And not interested. Very, very different to have spontaneous, genuine relating that is heartfelt, is bubbly, is delightful, is exquisite unto the moment. And that's what I found these people were doing. Quite extraordinary. Now, the possibility is that in today's world, I can give an example from country towns in Victoria. There's one that I've been observing a bit, is down near Hamilton, a little town called Penshurst. And in there, I found at least 14 to 16 that I'll describe as natural nurturers. And some of them have only been in Penshurst 1, 2, 3 years. And now there is a spontaneously occurring mutual help networking. They all know one another. It's a natural nurturing network. They meet up, they link with other, if they've got surplus eggs or surplus silver beet or tomatoes, they'll pop around and bring a few. If anything's happening around town, it's the natural nurturers that turn up. Now, what's happening is that they are introducing each other to more natural nurturers. Now, so it is not like it was in the big organisations of the UN, because they were using their technique, and they would come down and say, okay, there's been a disaster, everyone come and sit down and we'll look after you one by one, which the locals call bald egg psychology. Just turning us all into individuals. So what I'm talking about is very different to what we normally take for granted about how things get done. And that is by experts, by people that are professionally trained. So you get back to the UN groups. They would come in with their techniques and their planning and their control and all the things that you might take for granted, that's done properly. However, they are first to admit that almost all of their international aid projects, about 90% of international agency things that they do totally fail at the local level. And what happens is that the local people, using local ways, using local knowledge about what is needed at the local level, that works. So what I'm talking about, simple micro processes, like that simple little thing of getting those, the 8-year-old girl and her younger brother to do drawings was a micro process, a micro thing. And the other thing is stacking. Neville used to stack and stack and stack possibilities, just tee up lots and lots and lots of things. So if you're thinking of, as a listener to this, of how can I contribute to a better world, phronesis, practical wisdom, simple, very ordinary, micro moments in life that you can link together. Now, what tends to happen if you put this little leaf near my nose, and it's the most exquisite mint, and putting the mint to my nose, it immediately signals, Les, while you're talking, make sure you keep breathing. So, absolutely simple things. Now, you could say, but surely these people we're talking about are the people that are the most downtrodden, the people that have had a raw deal in life. Well, Neville took those, but where they'd been in psychiatric hospitals and people in prisons that they wouldn't give a day of parole to. And he said, Les, why am I using those? Because they've had society knocked out of them. Blank slate, tabula rasa. It's the easiest people to work with because you create a context where they get excited about things, bring them together, create a lovely space for them, and you found that they would immediately having processes, if you stack things together, where the overactive slow down a bit, the underactive speed up, the over-controlled start to loosen up a bit, and the under-controlled crazies start to get a bit more sensible. So you mix all of those together, the under-controlled overactives and the over-controlled underactives. You put them very, very close together, literally living to each other, 4 to a room in Neville's therapeutic community. There's a natural tendency for them to go to a more normal centre. It just naturally occurred. So that's some of the things that come to mind in those questions.